The red shoes danced her to death every midnight. Clara Mayfield was 17 when she inherited the estate of her late Aunt Evelyn, an eccentric seamstress with a peculiar obsession for vintage footwear. Her death, though sudden, was not unexpected. Rumors swirled through the village of Brerwick that Evelyn had gone mad in her final days, muttering about feet that bled joy and souls that danced beneath the floorboards. Clara didn't care for rumors. She cared for the attic, Evelyn's sanctuary. It was cluttered with cobwebs, old sewing mannequins, rows of antique heels, and one large, locked trunk at the center. The key, oddly enough, was placed atop the lid, waiting. Inside, wrapped in silk and crushed velvet, lay the red shoes. They weren't just red, they glowed, even in the shadows. The leather shimmered like wet blood. Delicate embroidery spiraled up the sides in symbols Clara couldn't recognize. Her breath hitched. She tried them on. They fit as though stitched to her skin. She twirled once, giddy, and the attic floor creaked beneath her feet. But something wasn't right. The shoes gripped tightly. Her heartbeat quickened. Then, just as quickly as the moment flared, it faded. The shoes released. She slipped them off, laughing uneasily. The next day, the shoes weren't where she left them. They sat neatly beside her bed. That night, Clara dreamed of music, discordant, shrill notes from an unseen violin. She stood alone in a grand ballroom, lit by hundreds of candles, their flames swaying to the rhythm of a waltz she couldn't hear. Her feet moved without her will, spinning, twisting, leaping. She woke breathless. Her sheets were tangled. Her toes ached. But it was only a dream. That's what she told herself. Until she saw the shoes, dusted with soot, and tiny flecks of what looked like dried blood. Over the following days, Clara began to change. She became restless. Her body ached, as if she'd run miles in her sleep. Her appetite dulled. Her eyes sunk. Villagers whispered when she passed by, the girl with the shadowed gaze, the girl who mumbled melodies under her breath. Even worse, she started hearing the music while awake. In the hush of her room, beneath the sound of the wind, faint violin strings that pulled at her bones. The shoes waited each night, always beside the bed. And every morning, her feet were raw, her legs trembling. She tried locking them away. Once, she threw them down the well. But the next night, there they were, gleaming, spotless, patiently waiting. She visited Father Morton, the village priest. He went pale when she described the shoes and pulled from his robes a worn, ancient book. He flipped quickly, landing on a page marked with a hand-drawn sketch, red shoes identical to hers. Demonium saltar, he whispered. The demon's dance. He explained in hushed tones that certain objects, especially those touched by blood rituals, could bind themselves to the living. Footwear was among the most dangerous, tied to motion, to rhythm, to flesh. They steal life, he said. With each step, they drain you, until nothing remains but the dance. He gave her an iron cross and a vial of sanctified ash. Place them inside the shoes. Do not wear them again. That night, Clara followed his instructions. She buried the shoes beneath her aunt's old garden bench, wrapped in salt and ash. She locked her doors, barred the windows, lit candles in every corner of the room. But just after midnight, the candles went out. One by one, the air thickened. Then the violin started, louder than ever before. Clara stood and found herself wearing the shoes. She couldn't scream, couldn't stop. Her feet moved of their own accord, dragging her down the stairs of the empty house, across the creaking floorboards, and into the garden. The moon glared overhead. She spun, faster, harder. Each twirl tore at her tendons. Her ankles buckled, but she danced on. Her face was soaked with sweat and tears, her breath sharp and wet. In the distance, a clock tower began to chime midnight. 12 strokes, 12 steps. And when the last bell rang, the earth opened beneath her, only slightly, just enough for the red shoes to sink in, heels first, dragging her downward, as if the soil itself wanted to dance with her. Clara screamed. And then everything went silent. The next morning, her room was empty. Only the shoes remained, pristine and polished, beside the bed, waiting. It was the gardener, Mr. Helms, who found the shoes first. The sun had barely risen when he noticed a strange glimmer beneath the garden bench. He bent down and blinked. The red shoes were nestled in the dirt like they'd bloomed overnight. Still spotless. Still radiant. He called for the constable, who arrived within the hour, along with a few nosy villagers. They searched the entire house but found no trace of Clara, no blood, no signs of struggle, not even footsteps in the dusty attic where she'd been staying. Only those shoes. Perfect. Crimson. Unmoved at the foot of the bed. Word spread quickly in Berwick. Another Mayfield vanished. Whispers about the old estate stirred like flies around a corpse. Many remembered Aunt Evelyn and her strange habits, how she danced barefoot in the snow, humming lullabies to no one. But only one person dared return to the house. Mara. She was Clara's childhood friend, older by 3 years, now a librarian in the neighboring town of Grendon. When she heard of Clara's disappearance, she took a week's leave and returned home. The house greeted her with silence. Thick air. Heavy dust. She wandered the halls, taking in the fading wallpaper and furniture draped in cloth. It felt like a museum of grief. Upstairs, in Clara's bedroom, she found the red shoes neatly arranged beneath the window. She didn't touch them, but they watched her. She could feel it. A presence, like open eyes beneath skin. Mara stayed the night. She wanted answers, and in Clara's journals, she found scraps, panicked entries about dreams, songs she didn't remember singing, pain in her legs, visits to the priest. One page was nearly torn through by pressure alone. I'm not walking, I'm being worn. On the final entry, smeared with what might have been blood, Clara had drawn a symbol. A looped spiral with daggered points, almost like a crown of thorns twisted into a dance circle. The same symbol was stitched along the sides of the red shoes. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. Something was pulling her awake. Not noise, but motion. She looked toward the end of the bed and froze. The shoes had moved. They now sat directly in front of her, perfectly aligned, facing her feet. She kicked them away, heart pounding, and locked them in a chest at the back of the closet. But just after midnight, she awoke to music. A violin, sickly sweet, notes dragged across the strings like screams turned melodic. She sat up. Cold sweat drenched her back. The chest was open, and the shoes were back at the foot of the bed. Mara fled the room and drove straight to the church, waking Father Morton in the middle of the night. He welcomed her with wide, sleep-deprived eyes. When she explained the shoes, he nodded grimly. She's passed it to you, he said. Who? Evelyn. The curse was hers. She lured Clara to inherit it. And now, the shoes are seeking another soul to dance. He led Mara into the back of the church and produced a hidden tome, a leather-bound grimoire with pages made of dried skin. It reeked of wax and rot. He opened to the same page he'd shown Clara once, Demonium Saltar. But beneath the illustration of the shoes was a footnote Mara hadn't seen in Clara's journals. They do not dance alone. The seamstress binds them. Her thread is time. Her stage is flesh. Father Morton explained that the shoes were merely vessels, enchanted by Evelyn's hands using old, forbidden rites. But Evelyn didn't create the curse. She revived it. The original tale dated back centuries to a Hungarian cobbler's wife who stitched souls into slippers. She believed if she could craft the perfect rhythm, she could cheat death. Her 12th attempt was the red pair. 12. Always 12. 12 hours. 12 dancers. 12 deaths. Mara's blood ran cold. You said it seeks 12? Father Morton nodded. You may be the second. Unless we end it. They devised a plan. The shoes had to be burned during a blood moon, purified with salt, ash, and the tears of the one marked to wear them. Only then could the bond be broken. But the next blood moon was 3 nights away. Mara returned to the house with salt and holy water. She placed the shoes in a ring of protective symbols and slept outside the circle. It didn't work. At midnight, the music began again. Louder now, desperate. The shoes shook. Then they floated, rising above the ground. And a figure emerged. At first, it looked like Clara. But the eyes were wrong. Black pits, weeping ink. The voice that came from her mouth was not hers. "You were always jealous, Mara," it hissed. "You wanted my place." Mara backed away, clutching the cross. The figure smiled, then vanished, leaving only the shoes behind. Mara knew then the curse was no longer just about wearing the shoes. It was becoming the previous dancer. Losing herself, piece by piece. Clara was still inside them. Not alive, but not at peace. And now they wanted Mara next. With 2 nights left until the blood moon, she realized something terrifying. She couldn't take them off. Somewhere beneath her jeans and socks, the red leather had already begun to wrap around her skin, like roots. They were creeping higher, and the music never stopped. Mara hadn't slept in over 36 hours. Her legs burned, not from running, but from something beneath her skin. She had wrapped her ankles in gauze, hoping to slow the spread, but it didn't help. The shoes were merging with her, stitching themselves into her flesh. The red leather pulsed faintly, as if alive. Every hour, she heard it music. Not in the air. In her bones. She called Father Morton again. His voice, once steady, now cracked with fear. "They're accelerating," he said. "They want the ritual stopped." Mara sat alone in Clara's attic, the symbol-covered floor damp with her sweat. "There has to be something I can do now." "There is," he said quietly. "You can speak to the seamstress." Mara's breath hitched. "Evelyn?" "No," Father Morton replied. "Evelyn was only the last host. The seamstress is older. And angrier." He gave her a name, one lost to modern tongues. Nadzeja. "She lives between waking and dream. You'll have to sleep to reach her. But be warned. If you fall too deep, she may sew your soul into the lining." Mara had no choice. That night, she drank a mix of valerian, poppy milk, and ash, just as Father Morton instructed. She sat in a salt circle with her back straight, staring into a broken mirror. The shoes hummed. Midnight struck. The world blinked. And then she was falling. It wasn't like a dream. It was too cold. Too sharp. She stood in a vast room of endless thread and floating needles. Shapes moved in the fog. Limping dancers, eyeless, twitching to an inaudible beat. Their skin shimmered like silk stretched too thin. Then she saw her. Nadzeja. A towering woman hunched over a loom made of ribs. Her fingers were bloodied, long and pale, moving with supernatural speed. She turned, her face stitched together with dozens of others, eyes borrowed, lips cracked and mismatched. "You dance well for one not yet finished," she hissed. Mara stepped back. "Why me?" Nadzeja smiled, her grin tearing further than her cheeks allowed. "Because Clara fought. You feel." Her hands twitched. A red thread slithered across the floor, like a worm, toward Mara. "Would you like to see her soul?" she asked. Before Mara could answer, Nadzeja snapped her fingers. The attic appeared again, but not as Mara remembered it. This version was twisted, distorted. The wallpaper bled. The furniture melted in slow, silent drips. And Clara was there. Not the friend she remembered. This Clara had stitches running across her forehead, down her lips, holding her together like a rag doll. Her feet bled onto the red shoes. "I didn't want to dance," Clara whispered. "But I saw what happens when you stop." Behind her, dancers spun in madness, spines broken, eyes spinning, feet shattered into glass. "They make you love the rhythm," Clara wept. "Until you forget you ever walked." Mara reached for her. But Clara was pulled away, sucked backward into the mirror with a final, broken smile. Mara snapped awake. She was screaming. The sun had barely risen. Her hands were trembling. But her legs were no longer hers. The shoes had grown, merged with her skin halfway to her knees. Veins around the leather throbbed red. Every step she took felt merry in it. She collapsed in tears. Then she heard it again. The violin. Closer this time. Mara packed everything she could: holy water, salt, Clara's journal, Father Morton's grimoire. She left the house before the sun fully rose. The blood moon was in 2 nights. She didn't know how long she had. Back in Grendon, she stayed in an old inn above a butcher shop, one of the only places with thick enough walls to muffle the nightly music. That night, she set her alarms to wake every 20 minutes. But at 2:33 a.m., she overslept. And the music found her again. She awoke standing. Not in bed, not even in the room. She was in the street, dancing, violently. The shoes pounded the cobblestones, her legs moving with unnatural speed. Blood dripped behind her. People stared from windows. She screamed, begged her legs to stop, but they twirled and stomped in rhythm. And then, she saw Clara again. But this time, only the top half. The bottom was dancing in front of her. Clara's smile was wrong, her eyes wide with madness. "Don't fight it, Mara," she said. "If you dance long enough, you forget the pain." Mara collapsed, sobbing in the gutter. A stranger helped her back to the inn. The next morning she called Father Morton one last time. "I'm not going to make it," she said. He responded, "Then we bring the fire to her." Mara realized the truth that night. This was never about shoes. It was about power. The seamstress didn't want dancers. She wanted puppets, a host to stitch herself back into the living world. Clara resisted. Evelyn embraced it. Mara had 1 night left before her soul was thread. And now, she would take the dance to Nedzaja. The journal Clara left behind, stained with tears and sweat, held one final clue. A forgotten church, deep in the Grendon forest. Burned down 50 years ago after an exorcism gone wrong. Its foundation was said to sit on a hollow beneath heaven, where the veil between the living and the cursed could be crossed, but not returned from. Mara stood at the edge of the woods as twilight bled into night. Her legs trembled, not from fear, but from resistance. The shoes itched now, lurching at shadows, desperate for rhythm. "I know," she whispered to them. "One last dance." The forest swallowed her. Twigs snapped like bones. The wind whistled an off-key lullaby. Owls watched her with knowing eyes. And then she saw it, just like Clara had drawn it. A charred foundation, blackened stones overgrown with moss. A broken bell buried halfway in soil. Symbols scorched into tree trunks like tattoos around a wound. She stepped into the ruins. Instantly, the air shifted. No birdsong. No breeze. Only pressure, like something watching. The ground vibrated softly, as if breathing. She lit 3 black candles in a triangle, following Clara's notes. One for protection. One for memory. One for severing. She poured her blood into the center, cut fresh across her palm. And then she spoke the name. Nedzaja. Once. Twice. Thrice. The ground cracked beneath her feet. And then it swallowed her whole. Falling. Again. Only this time, she landed not in dream, but in the seamstress's true domain. The realm of broken ribbons. Everything here was stitched together. Sky to earth, shadow to soul. Even time felt sewn by crooked hands. The world was a patchwork of suffering, lined with towering spools of thread made from hair, bones sharpened into needles, and rivers that bled. Mara's breath fogged. The shoes pulsed. And then she saw her. Nedzaja. No longer a distorted face in a dream. Now, full and real and impossibly tall. She wore a gown of flayed skin. A collar of teeth. Her fingers bled red thread with every gesture. "You came to finish the dance?" she asked, her voice like knives on fabric. Mara held the last candle in front of her. "No. I came to rip the thread." Nedzaja laughed. The sound warped the air. Dancers spilled from the dark. Men, women, children, some armless, some headless, all moving in a twitching, forced choreography. "You wear my gift," Nedzaja said, pointing to the shoes. "You owe me steps." Mara planted her feet. "Then let me choose the music." She threw the candle. It shattered at Nedzaja's feet. A wall of holy fire erupted, not to destroy, but to divide. The dancers screamed. Nadzeja hissed. And Mara ran. The seamstress's world bent around her like living cloth. Corridors shifted. Floors folded. Hands reached from seams in the walls, trying to claw her down. But the shoes, finally, worked in her favor. They didn't stop her. They guided her. Toward the center. Toward Clara. The prison of souls was a vast dome of mirrors, each reflecting a version of someone who had worn the red shoes before. Mara spotted her. Clara. Still whole. Still herself. Trapped inside the reflection of a dance she never chose. Mara? Clara cried. You're not real. She said you forgot me. I remembered every step, Mara said. Now help me end it. She pressed her hand to the glass. And Clara pressed back. The mirror cracked. So did 1,000 others. Souls screamed. And the seamstress roared. Nadzeja's true form descended, a colossal spider of cloth and bone, weaving flesh into banners, eyes blinking from her abdomen. You would undo centuries of rhythm, she hissed. All for one girl? No, Mara whispered. For every girl you buried in silence. She reached into Clara's reflection and pulled. Clara tumbled out, real, shivering, barefoot. The shoes leapt from Mara's feet in rage, crawling toward Nadzeja like loyal pets. Mara fell to her knees. And then Clara stood between them. You made us dancers, Clara said. But you forgot we also lead. She raised her hand and began to snap, slow, deliberate beats. The ground trembled. Other souls joined, women of every age, from every era. Snapping, chanting, stomping. Rhythm turned against the seamstress. The music was no longer hers. The floor split. From the core of the mirror dome, a red fissure opened, glowing, hungry, ancient. The rhythm pulled Nadzeja downward. Her thread snapped. Her stolen faces wept and tore free. No, she screamed. You need me. I made you beautiful. But the dancers only kept the beat. And Mara, limping, bleeding, stepped to the edge. This is our final bow, she whispered. And pushed. The fissure swallowed Nadzeja. The shoes screamed last. And the dome collapsed into silence. Mara woke in the ruins of the forest church, Clara beside her. The candles had burned out. The wind returned. The forest breathed again. They held each other. Not dancers. Just survivors. The town of Graydell welcomed Mara and Clara like ghosts returned from war. They were battered, bruised, and changed, haunted not just by what they had survived, but by the silence that greeted them. No one had even remembered Clara had gone missing. No posters. No prayers. Her existence, like those before her, had been stitched into shadows. I feel like I was erased, Clara whispered, watching her own reflection in a cafe window. But something inside me still remembers every step. Mara nodded. That's how she kept us quiet. The seamstress didn't just steal people, she unmade them. But now, Nadzeja was gone. Her realm shattered. The red shoes buried in the ruins of a church swallowed by vines. Or, so they hoped. Clara returned home to her mother, who wept without knowing why. Mara went back to her apartment, only to find it cleaned. Pristine. As if she'd never screamed in her sleep or bled on the bathroom floor. Her neighbors treated her with an eerie politeness. Kind but distant. They had forgotten, too. The world had moved on. But something hadn't. At exactly 12:01 a.m., Mara heard it. The shuffle of feet. Bare. Small. She rose from bed and walked toward the hall. There, in the dim light of the stairwell, stood a little girl. Not moving. Just watching. Her feet bleeding. Her eyes, black threads stitched across the lids. Mara gasped and flipped on the light. Gone. Just like that. But the wood floor bore 2 red footprints, burnt into the grain. She called Clara. I saw one, Mara whispered. A child. She had no eyes. Clara didn't speak for a long time. Then, I've been hearing music again. What kind? Waltz. The library yielded few answers. But in a sealed archive, Clara found something that made her blood run cold. An unfinished manuscript titled The Seamstress's Children. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was a ritual guide. Old Slavic in origin. Translated by a nun who later tore her own eyes out. Inside was a passage Clara read aloud in a shaking voice. When the first stitcher falls, her legacy does not die. Her children, made of thread and sorrow, shall awaken. They do not dance for joy, but vengeance. Only the one who danced by will may silence them, if she dares wear the shoes again. Mara stood, heart thundering. No. But deep down she already knew. That night, the nightmares returned. Only this time, children danced. Boys and girls. Some with missing limbs. Some armless, mouths sewn shut. All moving in jerky rhythm to an invisible conductor. They beckoned Mara. At the center of their circle was a new figure. Taller. Slender. Unfinished. Her face was a patchwork. One side Clara's, the other Mara's. She smiled. You made me, she said in 1,000 whispers. Now finish me. Mara woke screaming. Clara was waiting on her porch at dawn. They've started appearing in the park, she said. Children. Just standing there. No one remembers them being lost, but they look wrong. Glitched. Mara nodded. The ritual never ended. We didn't kill Nadzeja. We replaced her. Clara stared at her. You think we're the new seamstresses? No, Mara said. We're the ones she couldn't keep. And they hate us for it. There was only one way left to end it. The shoes. Clara had kept them, buried in a locked box beneath consecrated soil. They dug them up. Now, they pulsed faintly with red light. Hungry but weakened, Mara placed her hands over them. They didn't leap to her feet this time. They waited. I have to wear them, she said. One last time. Clara trembled. What if they finish what they started? Mara looked up. Then you stop me. No matter what. Midnight. The town square. Empty, yet full of whispers. Mara stepped onto the cobblestone stage and slipped on the shoes. They tightened around her ankles. Then, the music began. Not from speakers. Not from air. From inside her. A haunting violin melody spun from screams and lullabies. The children appeared, encircling her. Dozens. Then hundreds. All wearing stitched eyes and bleeding smiles. And at their center, the patchwork girl. Clara stood outside the circle, clutching a matchbook, ready to ignite the salt circle they'd drawn with holy ash. Mara raised her arms. And danced. Her limbs moved in pain. Her bones screamed. The shoes remembered every step. So did the children. She matched them. Spun with them. Led them. And with every twirl, a stitch from their eyes unraveled. A smile broke. A soul wept. They were remembering. Until only the patchwork girl remained. You gave us a stage, she said, voice cracking. Now burn it down. Mara faltered. Her feet bled. The girl extended her hand. Be the last seamstress. Or be the final thread. Mara turned to Clara, eyes desperate. Now. Clara struck the match. The salt ignited. Flames erupted in a perfect ring. The children screamed, not in pain, but joy. Their threads burned away. Their souls shimmered, then vanished into peace. But the patchwork girl, she charged. Mara stood her ground and whispered, This is your final dance. As the shoes burst into flame, taking her legs with them, the girl struck her. But Mara didn't fall. She held her close. A waltz of fire. And then, ash. They found Clara hours later, alone, crying. Mara was gone. All that remained was scorched earth and 2 faint footprints of blood and ash. No children had vanished since. The shoes were never found again. But on certain nights, in the Greydale Square, locals say they hear the sound of bare feet dancing on stone. Light. Gentle. Free. And sometimes, they see a figure. A young woman. Twirling. Smiling. Leading the forgotten home. One step at a time.